UFC 294 just recently wrapped up, and I'm going to recap the entire card, starting with the first fight of the night and working my way up to the main event. So make sure you guys smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, turn the post notifications on, and make sure to share the video as well. And let's jump right into the recap. First fight of the night, Shara Bullet Magomedov defeated Bruno Silva. There's going to be some red flags about Shara moving forward against guys that can wrestle, because something we saw from him is he can get put on his back. Now, on the positive side to that, he's very active from bottom position, throwing elbows. He's got nice up kicks, but doesn't really get back up to his feet all that well, and that's against a striker in Bruno Silva. Now, in the stand-up, Shara Bullet's kicks are immaculate. He destroyed Bruno's legs. He ripped to the body. He goes up high quickly, and he's definitely got crazy dexterity and quickness with his kicks. Hands are pretty solid as well, and he's nasty from the outside. It was a clean win over Bruno Silva. I thought he had done enough to get the victory. I definitely agree with the scorecards, as pretty much everybody will. Didn't get the knockout, but I don't think that's too big of a deal. I mean, he's 29. He's edging into his prime. He takes on Bruno Silva, who's a really hard guy to beat in a debut, and he cleanly outstruck him. I don't know who they'll throw next for Shara Bullet, but I'll say this, I would rather see them lightly work up the grappling competition as opposed to rushing him in there against somebody that can definitely wrestle him, because I can see him getting grinded out and losing a decision to a guy with pretty decent takedowns and top control. But ultimately, Shara Bullet's stand-up is nasty, and he had pretty good moments here with Bruno Silva. And it's not that Bruno didn't touch him a bit on the feet. It's just way more moments for Shara Bullet. So ultimately, I like the debut. I'm excited about Shara Magomedov. He's got that thing that is very likable. The eye being, discolored gives him this badass look. He seems like a villain out of a movie, and his striking is scary, and he's looking to do damage throughout the whole fight. So good debut. Next fight on the card, it was Victoria Dudakova and Jinh Frey. Honestly, this wasn't a great fight. I mean, it wasn't horrible, but it was Victoria Dudakova, I don't want to say getting exposed, but she wasn't a minus 535 favorite. She was decent in the stand-up and touched Frey a bit. Took her down a little, but most of the time it was takedown defense by Frey, and there's even, a moment Frey's on top of Dudakova. I think that Dudakova's hands are all right, and she definitely has decent potential at only 24. But her and Frey was pretty tit for tat throughout the whole thing. Frey's record, 11-10, just doesn't show that she's a decent fighter. She's on a 4-fight losing streak, too, in the UFC. And, probably going to get released from the UFC as well. Now, Dudakova missed weight by 0.6 pounds, which isn't a great look necessarily, but I still think she'll be at 115. I'm just not sold on her. I think the striking is decent, but it's not great. I don't think the grappling is extremely good, and I feel like she's going to run into some trouble at 24, 8-0. I think the O will eventually go, because right now, being 24 at the skill set she has, beating a Jinh Frey in competitive fashion, there's going to be girls that can stifle her game. So Dudakova with the W nonetheless, wasn't crazy impressive. She got a win. She's still young at 24. Next fight was Mohammad Naimov versus Nathaniel Wood. Naimov beat Nathaniel Wood, and the decision was fair. Naimov, did more when they were fighting, but ultimately I have to make a couple gripes. The low blows by Naimov were significant factors. The strike to the solar plex after the low blow knee was a big moment. And then obviously Naimov also grabbing the cage, stopping one of Wood's takedowns, and then having his hands in the glove when Wood had some moments with ground and pound, or at least attempting to throw some ground and pound. Naimov won the fight. He deserved the win, and this is a massive win for him, beating Nathaniel Wood, who's a pretty highly regarded guy at 145 pounds, who was on a 3-fight win streak, 3-0 in the UFC at 145, and seemed to be getting into his flow. Naimov was able to hurt him early in the fight. He looked stronger than him, and ultimately he gave a good showing. Wood fought real well in the 3rd round and got after Naimov late, but it was too little too late. Wood did hurt Naimov bad and drop him in the 1st round. But Naimov did enough to definitely win the 1st round. Naimov was the rightful winner of the fight. And just some gripes with the fouls, but ultimately Naimov's really fucking strong. He's got a pretty solid stand-up game, and I think that he's a decent guy at 145. I'm intrigued about what the UFC will do next, because beating Nathaniel Wood, who beat the likes of Andre Fili, like, I'm almost curious to see Fili versus Naimov. That's kind of a fight that I'm interested in. Don't know if the UFC would go that direction. I don't know how they're going to look to build Naimov, being a Tajikistan prospect that they can use to grow that market. But I kind of like Andre Fili versus him next. For Wood, it's a setback. I don't know how far. Maybe a Ricardo Ramos fight at some point. Let's keep running. Next fight on the card, it's Mike Breeden versus Anshul Jubli. Anshul Jubli won the first 2 rounds and then froze in round 3 when Mike Breeden started barking at him and using some gamesmanship. It's like literally Jubli seemed like a deer in headlights, and Breeden knocked him out in the 3rd round after clearly losing the first 2 rounds. Now, Breeden missed weight by a ton. He was 159.5, and I have to say, heading into a 3rd round and getting a 3rd round finish, if you would have cut the rest of that weight, probably is not having that gas tank and spurt in round 3, so that could definitely change the fight. That's why weight missing, you know, is such a bad thing for the game. That's why he sacrificed 30% of his purse. But nonetheless, Breeden got a cut in training, and he came into this fight with stitches in the eyebrow, and they busted open. He showed a lot of grit and heart and made it a good scrap and ended up getting a win. Just the weight miss is a black eye on this victory, but nonetheless, it's a UFC win for him. It shows that he doesn't have quit in him. He's got some heavy hands, and he can box. When he's in his flow, Mike Breeden can box, and he ripped up Jubli in round 3 with the flatline KO, and he was a massive underdog in this fight. So respect to Mike Breeden getting it done, beating the road to the UFC winner, Anshul Jubli, who was India's only hope, and right now it ain't looking too good. Next, it was Sedriques Dumas versus Abu Azaitar. Dumas got a clean W, beat him by a decision. Azaitar was throwing hard shots in the fight and kind of had Dumas a little bit hesitant. In the first round, Dumas controlled well. He landed 1 takedown and it was pretty much in top position for the rest of the round. Striking in the 2nd round, I edged it towards Azaitar, and then Dumas competitively taking it in the 3rd. That late high kick was a big moment for him, and I think that stole the fight essentially. But it was real competitive with Abu Azaitar, who's essentially a part-time fighter. Azaitar put his, pedal to the metal and tried to throw hard, but he just doesn't have the technical tools. He's got real long arms at 5'9", thick frame, but he is a short guy for 185 pounds, 5'9", more suited for 155 in all actuality. It was a good W for Sedriques Dumas, though, because he's showing that he's evolving, he's looking more patient, he's rounding out his skill set, and honestly, there's no negative gripes there. I think it was a good performance by Dumas, beating a vet like Azaitar, who's not easy for anybody. This one sucked. Javid, Basharat, Victor Henry, it ended in a no contest because of a low blow that I think definitely hit the cup. And obviously I know there was some argument, like the doctor almost said, no, I didn't hit you in the balls. Victor Henry got kicked in the nuts, and it was like under the cup, and it lifted it, and it dropped him bad. Victor Henry was in serious pain after the low blow, and Javid Basharat, at the end of the day, was winning the fight. He had won the first round. It seemed like he was on his way to get a hard-fought win over a crafty vet like Victor Henry. Now it ends in a no contest. So what do we do from here? I don't think Henry's going to be as ready for a rebooking as Basharat will be. I think Basharat, there's a chance they put him on a card towards early 2024, January, I could see. I'd like a quick turnaround. I don't hate the idea of running this one back, but don't be surprised if the UFC moves on with this matchup. Victor Henry definitely got kicked in the nuts, and it was definitely, a deserving no contest. He couldn't continue after that shot, and he was not acting. You could see the pain in his face. He was grimacing after that low blow, and he's getting like a testicular ultrasound. So I hope the guy's all right. Victor Henry, gutsy dude, got kicked in the balls bad, and it was a no contest. Javid was looking solid, though, with his technical chops, though, and he looked like he was on his way to a decision win. Next fight, Trevor Peak, Mohammad Yahya. No matter the technical kickboxing of Yahya, Trevor Peak's pitbull street fighting style comes to fruition. Now, he kind of toned it down a little bit. I'd say this is probably like the most relaxed version of Trevor Peek that I ever saw, because he didn't just go crazy from the moment the fight started. He waited and he, exploded at moments in the fight. And he out-grappled Muhammad Yahya, hurt him with punches on the feet, finished the fight, beating him up, gets top position, looks strong as an ox. He's got that country boy Chattanooga strength. And I think that it was a pretty solid W for Trevor Peek here. Muhammad Yahya is a decent fighter, and, there was hype on him because he's from UAE, and, they're looking to build a local guy there, and he was a champ over there. But he couldn't get past Trevor Peek, who at the end of the day has like that street fighting style that works for him. He's so physically strong. He's a natural-born fighter, and he's got way more explosiveness. Like, Yahya looked a little slow on his feet. He was hesitant to strike. I'd say he was pretty gun-shy to let his hands go for the most part. And Trevor Peek definitely deserved the win. And, showing some wrinkles in the wrestling game, too. It was a good performance. I liked it for Trevor Peek. Great W there for him. And he took out Muhammad Yahya in clean fashion. And I think we can say Trevor Peek's evolving a bit. He's evolving. Now, I think eventually he's going to get chinned by somebody with heavy hands, but we got some fun fights still. And I know that John Anik hinted towards maybe Peek dropping to 145. I wouldn't be opposed to that either. Let's get to the featured prelim. It was Tim Elliott versus Mohammad Mokaev. Mokaev ends up submitting him, arm triangle in round 3, but it was a competitive fight. It's not like Mokaev just ran over Tim Elliott. He even got taken down by Tim. Tim threatened with guillotines. He made it an awkward and uncomfortable fight. Elliott did touch up Mokaev with a down knee one time, and then a miscalled down knee that ended up getting them put back in the position. And Mokaev did this absolutely beautiful technique. Daniel Cormier said the move on the broadcast, what was it called? Was it like a turnaround or a spin around or a push around? Something. All I know is excellent wrestling by Mokaev that he ended up on top after Tim Elliott had kneed him. And then he gets on top, locks in the arm triangle, wins the fight. His grappling from top is dangerous, and if he passes your guard, you're in trouble. Tim Elliott was not an easy guy, to get past his guard. He was threatening in that guard with guillotines. He almost had a triangle armbar, and Mokaev smashed Tim Elliott on his head with an excellent slam, and Tim Elliott looked like he got rocked from that, and he did. He said in the corner that he did. He admitted it. So Mokaev's a damn good prospect. He calls out Kaikar, Franz Manelkop, and Amir Albazi, all top fighters in the weight class. Beating number 10, Tim Elliott, and getting the finish, I'd say it's a pretty worthy accolade to earn yourself a massive fight. And I'm all in to see what Mokaev can do against some of the better guys in the world. Tim Elliott's like the greatest gatekeeper the UFC could ever imagine. Because if you can't beat Tim, you're not ready for the big boys. But if you beat Tim Elliott, you're up there. Because he's extremely tricky to deal with. He took Mokaev down. He had him in a guillotine. He had him in a triangle armbar. Ultimately, Mokaev, almost impossible to tap. I mean, he's never been tapped as a pro MMA fighter or an amateur. And he keeps on moving up. He's 10-0 on Tapology, but 11-0 if you include what the UFC's official record has for him. Good W. And I'm saying definitely top-tier opposition from here on out. I want to see it. I like the Albazi fight a lot, but I know Albazi might be booked. Let's jump to the main card. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you smash the likes. And if you're new, subscribe. It was Said Nurmagomedov versus Muin Gafarov. Said Nurmagomedov pulls off the guillotine choke, a.k.a. the ninja choke, and strangles Gafarov in 1 minute and 13 seconds. Nurmagomedov has an amazing guillotine, and Gafarov put his head right into it, like looping shots, ducking down, and looking to spam a takedown. And Nurmagomedov saw it from a mile away and locked it right in, and you knew the fight was over. Gafarov taps on the wrong side, like not the side the ref's on, and then Nurmagomedov lets him go, and flat out goes Gafarov. This was an impressive win. I thought it was a huge mismatch, and I think this could have been a minus 600 favorite tag for Nurmagomedov, looking at how the fight ended up going, because Gafarov was clearly outgunned, and obviously he had a loss to John Castaneda last time, which I said this fight against Said Nurmagomedov is a massive step up in competition, and it showed. He wasn't ready for it. Said Nurmagomedov pulled it out, and he looked nasty with his subs. It was an absolutely tremendous submission, and I was really impressed by him pulling that one out and locking up the guillotine, aka ninja choke. Nurmagomedov is a strangler, and I think at bantamweight he's still very good. I mean, the loss to John, what was it, against, what am I forgetting the name? Yanez and Martinez last. It was John Martinez, right? Am I not? Jonathan Martinez. What am I fucking forgetting the name for? I think that Said Nurmagomedov being as close as he was with him, like that shows he's pretty quality in every aspect of the game, looking at what he did to what Martinez did to Yahya, I should say. Yanez, I should say. Fuck, I'm fucking fumbling every name over here. I got so many fights up in this brain. Listen, Nurmagomedov got it done, and I think he's a fun guy at 115. If you give him his neck, he's taking it home with him. Next fight on the card. Ikram Aliskerov, Warley Alves. Ikram Aliskerov destroyed Warley Alves. Alves threw some decent kicks early on in the fight, but Ikram was able to hurt him with the jab, rock him with a flying knee, and then throw a huge flurry of punches, a beautiful uppercut, and then just drops Warley Alves against the cage and lays waste to him. Now, after the fight, Ikram didn't call anybody out, but I could see a Nasruddin Imavov rebooking. I think that Ikram deserves ranked opposition only because he's going to run over the vast majority of guys. Like, listen, the UFC middleweight division, I think there's beatable guys for him for sure. All right, let's see. Let me pull it up on my phone here. I'm pulling up the rankings for the fight right here. All right. If I'm the UFC, Imavov was number 11. I'd watch that rebooking. I think the Jack Hermanson fight's interesting. Even a Paulo Costa match, which they wanted to book. Where do you go? Ikram versus Vettori. Ikram just runs over Vettori. I think you can knock him out. He's definitely top caliber. Warley, not a bad idea to stick at 85, but you're not going to beat Ikram Aliskerov. It's just how it goes. The dude's extremely well-rounded, and I think he's on the way up to being, you know, top-tier opposition in the UFC. I think he's getting somebody ranked. I don't know about him winning the belt, but somebody towards the upper echelon of the middleweight rankings for sure. Sick knockout. The next one, the featured bout, it was an unfortunate no contest. Magomed Ankalaev, Johnny Walker. There was a blatant illegal knee by Magomed Ankalaev that seemed to hurt Johnny Walker, but not super significantly. The referee called it right away. They call a timeout. Johnny Walker was down. They bring in the doctor. The doctor asked Johnny Walker, do you know what country you're in? You know where you're fighting? And he said, I'm fighting in the desert. And then he also tried to ask him what round, and it seems like Johnny Walker didn't give him an answer because he looked visibly confused. I think that that knee actually really rocked Johnny Walker, and he was kind of out of it. Ankalaev then, you know, on the other side is waiting what's going on. What do? The doctor says, fight over. No contest, they call it. Johnny Walker, visibly confused, he's still trying to fight Magomed Ankalaev. They're talking shit to one another, probably, you know, not even verbal shit. They're just like, come on, let's fight, let's go. Johnny Walker shoves the referee, which is a massive no-no for the UFC. And Jason High, back in the day, got cut from the UFC because of putting his hands on a referee. So, interesting, they're not going to do that to Walker, I hope, especially him being concussed. But, like, hey, Jason High was also just knocked out by Rafael Dos Anjos when they cut him for doing that. And the treatment is now different for Johnny Walker. I'm just saying. The dude's concussed. He lays his hand on the... I don't think it's intentional. He didn't knock him out. He didn't punch him. He was like, what's going on? What the fuck? Let's fight. And then the security jumps in. It seems like Ankalaev now is trying to run at Johnny Walker, and it looks like a brawl is about to break out. Thankfully, Dana White gets in there, and he tells Johnny Walker, calm down, we'll figure it out. They call the fight a no contest. Even after the fight, Ankalaev and Walker were face-to-face. They look like they almost got into it again. I think we rebooked them because the fight was just getting heated up. Ankalaev got touched a bit on the feet. He got kicked a bit, but, you know, the same could be said for Walker. And Ankalaev was, you know, in a dominant position on the ground. Not extremely dominant, not mount, but he was in the dominant position of the two. He was winning at that moment. So I think we run it back. I'd like to see the rematch. I'd like to see it without a, you know, inconclusive ending like this. I'd say I'd watch it again. Good fight, though, while it lasted. I think it was heating up nicely. Big mistake by the doctor. Hopefully we see them scrap once again. No contest. Is what it is. For Ankalaev, he's so pissed. He's like, are you kidding me? I get a draw. I get a no contest. He's like, I can't fucking win here. He had a no contest against Iwan Kutelaba the first time. Or I guess they called it a TKO, right? And then they ran it right back. Yeah, Ankalaev's in that series of unfortunate events, man. He's trying to work towards the title shot, but little mistakes. That at the end of the day, that could have been a disqualification. They chose to call it a no contest. That could easily have been a DQ because that was an illegal strike, whether blatant or not. No contest. Co-main event. We can go deep with this co-main event. All right. It was Kamaru Usman, Khamzat Chimaev. Usman gave Chimaev a very difficult fight. First round, though, Khamzat takes Usman down almost immediately. He gets on top of Usman. He's beating him up. He gets his back. He's beating him up more. He looks to lock up a rear naked choke while they were standing. Usman like spikes him. And then Khamzat still retains top control. It's like absolutely destroying Usman in the first round. Usman could not get Khamzat off of him. I scored that first round 10-8 for the dominance. I thought that was a clean 10-8 first round for Khamzat. Very hard to argue that. I think that everybody agreed. All the judges did too. Round 2, Usman's having success with a jab. Khamzat's striking is kind of looking stifled. He's freezing a bit. He does take Usman down late in the second round and get to side control, attempting crucifix position. But ultimately, I kind of feel like you have to score the second round Usman. Could see it for Khamzat, but you definitely could score at Usman for more significant strikes. He did stun Khamzat a little bit. Not significantly, a little bit. Round 3, Usman's stand-up is working. Khamzat's failing a couple takedown attempts, but he does eventually get Usman to the ground, and he did work from the top position, threw a bit of ground and pound, stayed on top of him, was controlling well, and then Usman did find a way back up to his feet, and it was a pretty competitive back-and-forth exchange towards the very end of round number 3. They slugged it out, for the fans in the last few moments. And both guys got a couple shots in, but nothing significant. A little bit wild. I thought that Khamzat had done enough to win. I thought it was 29-27 Khamzat. 2 out of the 3 judges agreed. Just 1 judge did score the fight a draw. And I personally thought that Khamzat Chimaev deserved 29-27. That's a fair decision. But he was pushed to the limit on a 10-day short notice, Kamaru Usman. Not a full camp world champion Usman. And you got to wonder if they would have done this fight at 170 some time ago, maybe Kamaru Usman could have taken out Khamzat. Maybe if it was 5 rounds here, he could have upset Khamzat. Nonetheless, Khamzat Chimaev deserved the win for the 3 rounds. He pulled it off. He beat a legend in Kamaru Usman. Wasn't like a crazy impressive beatdown besides in that first round. It was kind of like, Khamzat's getting tired in round 3. He can get touched in round 3. Usman, after the fight, said, DC brought it up, he said that there was an opportunity to do 5 rounds. Usman turned that down for just 3 rounds, realized it was a massive mistake. He doubted his cardio. If it was 5 rounds, he may have beaten Khamzat. Because Khamzat was weathering late. He was fatiguing late. He's known as the cardio machine. I think that's a misstatement. I don't think that's true. I don't think Khamzat has bad cardio, but I think he does fatigue. Slowed down significantly in the second and in the third round and began to spam wrestle. And yes, his wrestling is that good where he can spam wrestle. But he was looking tired. It was a good win for Khamzat, right? So now he's in a position where he's going to be fighting for the world title against Sean Strickland. That's the offer that's on the table. He gets to fight the best of the best. If Sean Strickland could survive Khamzat's onslaught, I got to wonder what a second, third, and fourth round would look like. It's just, can Sean Strickland stop those takedowns? Worrisome. Very worrisome. Because if we're talking striking, I think Sean Strickland could touch Khamzat up. And you guys know I'm a big Khamzat fan, but I'm keeping it real. I called Khamzat Chimaev the lock this week, and I think that was definitely the right call. It pushed me to 9 locks in a row as well, which I'm happy about. Granted, by the time the fight came around, the odds weren't great. I think that Khamzat here is going to fight against Strickland, and it's going to be very dependent upon can he get Strickland out of there. If we're going 4 or 5 rounds, you got to favor Strickland. If we're in the first 2, you favor Khamzat. Third round is the wild card round. But we got 5-round championship fight next. Now, I will say this. Khamzat, after the fight, delivered a very positive message on peace amongst the people around the world. Honestly, really enjoyed it. I think Khamzat, he said the right thing, and that earns him a lot of respect. It was a very touching post-fight speech. I liked it a lot. I think it was good that he brought up, like no matter what religion, it's Jewish or Muslim or Christian, he's talking about all coming together, which I thought is a great message, especially with the turmoil that's going on in like Palestine to Israel. So at the end of the day, Khamzat W, post-fight W in the cage. Was it the most great victory that he could have hoped for? No. Finishing Usman in the first round would have really made him look like the terrifying boogeyman that can't be beat. He is human. And you can hurt him. You can touch him, but he's still unbeaten. And he beat a legend in Kamaru Usman. After the fight, Usman mentioned fighting Dricus du Plessis, which I find really interesting. Usman and Duplessis, Usman stepping in for Israel Adesanya to crown the King of Africa. I don't hate that idea. I don't hate it at all. I think Usman can stick around at 85, and I can imagine a full camp Usman's wrestling being a problem for Dricus du Plessis. So count me into that fight. I like the idea of Usman making a new run here at 185, filling his frame out. I think it's a better decision, because if he can do a really competitive fight with Khamzat on just 10 days notice, I can't imagine full camp Usman isn't a top fighter at 185. I think it's a better move with the knee issues now. A little bit slower paced. He can get a hold of these guys, use more strength now. Yeah, I think this is good for Usman. Khamzat, nonetheless, looked really solid. It was a great W for his career, and I look forward to his title challenge against Strickland, which he will be the favorite in. But if they get in the later round, Sean Strickland's dangerous. And Usman versus Du Plessis, I like the idea. Main event of the evening, it's Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski 2, and it was not like the first fight. Let me tell you that. The first fight was back and forth, extremely competitive, and it ended with Alexander Volkanovski on top of Islam Makhachev dropping ground and pound. This one ends with a high kick in the first round. Volkanovski got laid out. Makhachev then followed up with some quality ground and pound. I knew Volk was finished. That left high kick froze Volkanovski. And you notice he does that that dip feint that way. And Makhachev was throwing some front kicks up the center, making his reads, and boom, that high kick lands flush. It looked like a baseball bat hitting the head of Volkanovski, and it drops him. And Makhachev follows up with ground and pound and looked like an absolute monster, because I think he is that guy. I think Islam Makhachev is extremely dangerous. I think that moving forward in his career, damn, I'm trying to think, can anybody beat this guy at 155? Now, people will always say this, and I'll even bring it up. Volkanovski did take the fight on short notice, and he was visibly fatter than he was first time out. But nonetheless, it was in the first round. So even a short notice Volk, in that first round, he's still, I think, at that peak danger, right? And Makhachev laid him out early before the fatigue even set in. Now, you could say maybe Volk hadn't had the reps in and whatnot, and that's fair. And this does kill the chance of them running it a third time unless Volk goes on a great streak or somehow some weird opportunity arises. But a knockout like this where he stepped in on short notice after such a good first fight, looking at it now from the outside looking in, not having the dollar signs in my pocket, not having, multi-million dollars for getting laid out with a head kick, I think it's a mistake for Volkanovski's legacy, and to fight Makhachev on a full camp, it seems like a must. You can't take it on short notice. Makhachev looked like a god out there. It was an excellent performance. Volk was trying to wrestle him. He looked outgunned, man. Like when they were against the cage and Volk couldn't hit him with the knee to the head because he was too short, it's like you could almost just feel that Islam Makhachev was going to beat him. And Makhachev lays him out with a high kick in the first round. I vote Justin Gaethje next. I want to break from the rematch thing. Like we just saw Makhachev Volk again. I don't need to see him and Oliveira again. I want to see Gaethje get his shot. No matter how upsetting it can be for Oliveira, and it's fair that it would be, I want to see Makhachev Gaethje more than I want to see Oliveira Makhachev too. Especially how good Makhachev looked against Volk. It's like you got to think the fight with Oliveira would go similarly to last time, maybe even more impressive from Makhachev. At least you got Volk. It's new blood. It's a heavy-handed dude who's got amazing leg kicks and does have a wrestling background. So I vote Gaethje because styles make fights, and I want to see that matchup. For Volkanovski, what does he say after? I'm going to go back down and I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight at 145. It's the worst Volk fucking impression ever. I was kind of going Conor McGregor, Leon Edwards mode. Nonetheless, he said that he's going to drop back down to 45, and he wants to fight in January against Topuria after getting knocked out with a head kick. I will say this. I think that that's a reason they don't do the fighter interviews after dudes get laid out, because the head is not fully with them. I don't think he should be fighting Topuria with 8 weeks, 10 weeks off, because there's a real chance that Topuria's power could put Volk's lights out. So he needs to get fully recovered and be prepared for that fight. Listen, this might be the end of Volkanovski. Getting knocked out with a high kick like that, it's not a guarantee you come back from it. Then you go heavy-handed, up-and-coming guy, Topuria lays him out. Would it be that crazy? Now, I'm not saying a full camp Volk loses to Topuria. but I'm just saying, a big knockout loss like this at 35 can totally shift your career. It's like the penultimate fight. And then next thing you know, you go in the other direction and you're catching L's, and maybe Volkanovski's time as being a world champion's ending. We'll see. Nonetheless, respect to Volk taking on short notice. Makhachev with an absolutely sick knockout, and he's that dude. And I want to see him and Gaethje fight because his kickboxing is crazy, and we know he can wrestle his ass off. Now, before I book out, I want to review the picks. My record for the night, 8 wins, 3 losses, 2 no contest, and I'm on a 9 lock of the week streak, so I'm grateful. So let's start it off. First fight of the night, we got a win with Shara Bullet over Bruno Silva. Win with Victoria Dudakova over Jinh Frey. Loss with Nathaniel Wood taking an L to Mohammad Naimov. Loss with Anshul Jubli getting laid out by Mike Breeden in the 3rd round. Win with Sedriques Dumas over Abu Azaitar. No contest. I had Javid Basharat, who did look on his way to winning. Win with Trevor over Mohammad Yahya. Win with Mohammad Mokaev over Tim Elliott. Win with Nurmagomedov over Muin. Win with Aliskerov over Warley Alves. No contest here. I had Ankalaev over Walker. And very well, that fight could have been going the way of Ankalaev. But nonetheless, it's a no contest. Win with Khamzat over Usman. And then lost with Volkanovski over Makhachev, which looks like the worst pick of all time. But hey, the lock of the week, Khamzat hit. It's 9 locks in a row. There was some greatness shown out there by Islam Makhachev. It was an amazing performance. And also note that Naimov was a big dog here with Wood. Breeden, big dog here with Jubli. Those were the 2 underdogs on the card that ended up coming through, which was, you know, a heavy favorite card besides those 2 prelim fights. But I'll tell you this, it was enjoyable to watch. I had a great time covering it throughout the week. No UFC fights this coming Saturday. But we got boxing. We got Ngannou versus Fury, so you can't be that upset. And I'll be covering that. I'll be doing a live for that. I'm going to drop early predictions for the Sao Paulo card on the channel tomorrow, which will be Sunday. So keep your eyes peeled. Smash the likes if you guys haven't. Much love to everybody watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the post-fight show and the week's worth of content. If you don't have the post notifications turned on, turn them on. Don't just leave them on personalized. Put them on all so you don't miss a video. Thank you all for tuning in. Drop a W in the chat if you got nothing to say in those comments, but just to boost the algorithm for your boy. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace, everybody.